الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي قصرت عن رؤيته أبصار الناظرين وعجزت عن نعته أوهام الواصفين الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين وبالقاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نون والقلم وما يسطرون ما أنت بنعمة ربك بمجنون وإن لك لاجرا غير ممنون وإنك لعلى خلق عظيم صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات بيج محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. Respected brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. We're in the fourth majlis of the series of majalis, and I've been reciting these verses from chapter number 68 from the Holy Quran, known as Surah Qalam. We spoke briefly about the tafsir and in depth about the aspect of the revelation of the surah, its position from the sequence of the revelation, and how that is unique in its sense that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is emphasizing a great deal on the very first occasion when He reveals to be Iqra, and the second occasion that He reveals is Wal Qalam. And we reached this last ayah, in which we haven't been able to shed some light upon, and that is وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. That, O Prophet, and I'll translate the entire 4 verses for those who haven't been here, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins this chapter by this abbreviated huruf-e muqatta'a, noon. And then He takes an oath by the pen by saying وَالْقَلَمِ وَمَا يَسْطُرُونَ, by the pen and that which you write with this pen. O Prophet, with the grace of Allah, you're not insane. مَا أَنْتَ بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ بِمَجْنُونَ. And then mentions that indeed you will be rewarded an everlasting reward, أَجْرَ غَيْرِ مَمْنُونَ. And indeed you are at the highest standard of morality. إِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. Our Prophet Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam also declared in regards to his bi'asat, he said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. That one of the purposes of his bi'asat, the reason that he was sent to mankind, was to go ahead and complete or to perfect the ethical values. With that said, we look at the display of Prophet's akhlaq on numerous occasions in the 23 years of the period of his propagation. That not only through the ayat that were revealed unto him, but also through his extraordinary akhlaq, how he preached the humanity. And that is the reason Quran calls upon him by saying that if you were كنت غليظ القلب لانفضوا من حولك. O Prophet, لنت لهم, that if you were stern-hearted, these people would definitely have deserted you. They would have definitely left from your surrounding. The fact that you possess a heart which is, merciful, you're sent as rahmat for the alameen, that is the reason that people have not deserted you, and they're still around you, and they're still listening to you. But nonetheless, there were many opportunities and there were many mishaps during this 23 years while people had attacked Rasulullah. With that said, Rasulullah highlighted on numerous occasions these ni'mat, these favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the things that this ayah mentioned is, it says, وَمَا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ بِمَجْنُونَ. That with the grace and the ni'mat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're not majnoon. That Prophet was asked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, it is in relation to Hazrat Musa that, "Oh Musa, make people attracted to me." Today, the picture that some so-called Muslims have portrayed of Islam is a very despicable picture. A picture which would not represent Islam correctly, or does not represent Islam correctly. A picture, if it's shown to someone, they will definitely run away from this religion known as Islam. The picture which is depicted by the so-called groups that are acting against Islam. And Prophet Musa ﷺ is being addressed, "Oh Musa, make people attracted to me." Well, how am I going to make people attracted to you? By blowing up, houses of worship? By attacking people? By killing them because simply they don't believe in the same ideology as I do? No. Oh Allah, tell me the way how I can go about doing so. Allah responded to Hazrat Musa, "Remind them of my favors unto them. Remind them all the ni'mat that I have bestowed upon them. The favors that I have given to them, when you mention these favors are from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they will be inclined toward me." Isn't that the case with us as well? That when you receive something from an unknown source, you would like to know who the source is. You would like to then take an opportunity to thank that source for having given you that favor. That is the dastur, that is the way we deal. So here we look at how Quran has emphasized a great deal on ni'mat, and how Quran has embodied Rasulullah to be khuluq azim. That he is the standard of morality for you. If you want to follow someone, as far as the akhlaqiyat are concerned, go ahead and look no further than Rasulullah. And from there, it trickles down to our masumin, eventually. And the first and the foremost in that list is none other than Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, alayhi salatu wassalam. And we've known Amir al-Mu'mineen through Nahj al-Balagha, unfortunately. We think that that is the only work of Amir al-Mu'mineen that exists, compiled by Sharif Radi. In this book, we find 279 sermons. We find the wasaya and the letters of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and we find close to 460 short sayings of Amir al-Mu'mineen. But we think that only the Shias have focused on the kalam of Amir al-Mu'mineen. That is not the case. When you look at, there are prominent Sunni scholars who have also detailed and have written extensively when it comes to Amir al-Mu'mineen. We've all heard of Imam Nasai, one of the authors of the Sihah Sitta, the 6 authentic books of Ahl Sunnah. One of them is written by Imam Nasai. Imam Nasai visited Sham. And when he visited Sham, he saw that people were cursing Amir al-Mu'mineen. It was a dastur of Sham for the speaker to rise onto the pulpit, and the first thing that they would do is to curse Ahlul Bayt, and specifically Amir al-Mu'mineen. You know how you have the speakers, when they ascend on the mimbar, they praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, praise the household of the Prophet, and praise Prophet as well. But the dastur over there was that they would say dushnam, they would curse the household of Rasulullah, and specifically they will curse Amir al-Mu'mineen. When Imam al-Nasai saw this situation, again using that qalam of his, he penned down a book called Khasa'isu Amir al-Mu'mineen. Khasa'isu Amir al-Mu'mineen is a book which literally it means the features. Khasa'is is the plural of khususiyat. The khasa'is and the khususiyat and the features of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He wrote this book in answer to those people who either were misled into understanding Amir al-Mu'mineen or had no idea who they were. Because the point, to the extent that these people had reached, that when Amir al-Mu'mineen was killed and the voice was raised that قُتِلَ عَلِيٌّ فِي الْمِحْرَابِ لِشِدَّةِ عَدْلِهِ, that Ali was martyred in the mihrab of the masjid. People questioned, Ali and masjid? What was Ali doing in masjid? Thinking that Ali had nothing to do with masjid. To that extent that these people were brainwashed. This was the era of 25, 30 years that this brainwashing had been done. So Imam Nasai's jihad against those people was that he wrote this book called Khasa'isu Amir al-Mu'mineen. And because of writing this book, a lot of people question, why don't you write about Amir al-Sham? He said, what is there to write? And for that reason, he was beaten up. And the riwayat mentioned that when he returned to Medina, he actually died succumbing to those wounds that he had received in Sham. Thus, some of them pronounce him to be Shaheed because he wrote a book in defense of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and for that reason he was killed. Now this book, you say, well, how good is this book to me when it's going to be in Arabic? No, luckily this book has been translated into English by the author by the name Michael Mumisa. He translated this book, Khasa'isu Amir al-Mu'mineen, and I'm sure in the age of digital world, you can find the PDF and the digital copy of it online, and I would urge you to go ahead and study this book as well. Another a great Sunni alim by the name Qadi al-Quda'i, he also wrote a book of the kalam of Amir al-Mu'mineen called Dasturu Ma'alim al-Hikam. Dasturu Ma'alim al-Hikam was also written, which is a compilation of the traditions of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Again, this book has also been translated into English by the author by the name Tahira Qutbuddin. This book is also available. I would urge that you go ahead and study. Make that to be part of your study alongside with Nahjul Balagha. Salawat Beji Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Before turning the page back to Quran, as our discussions have been surrounding Quran, inshallah I will bring it back towards it under this ayah that I have been reciting, but just wanted to share some pearls of wisdom from Dasturu Ma'alim al-Hikam. 3 pearls of wisdoms, and especially the youngsters who are sitting, you're allowed to use your phones if you want to jot down the notes, that make them to be part and parcel of your life. These are very short, traditions and ahadith associated to Amir al-Mu'mineen, and how they address, and they're so practical to us. Only 3 inshallah, very quickly. First, in the Surah Ma'alim al-Hikam, Qadi al-Quda'i narrates from Amir al-Mu'mineen that Imam said, Da'a anka awunnu wa ahsabu wa ara. So small, right? Very small. It's easy for you to memorize. I'll say it 4 or 5 more times. Inshallah, by the end of the majlis, you will have it memorized. He said that Imam said, Da'a anka adunnu wa ahsabu wa ara. Refrain from using the words, I suppose, I reckon, and, I think. Especially when it comes to the knowledge which you do not possess. One of the biggest follies of mankind is this tongue of his. The majority of the mistakes are made from this tongue. The words uttered from the tongue, they cannot be drawn back. Once they leave your mouth, they're gone. And the damage that they have done. Famous poet said, the wounds that are caused by the weapons, by the sword and the spear, they eventually heal. But the wounds that are caused by the words, there's no healing of those. They remain forever. And therefore Imam is saying to us, da'a anka. Refrain from using adhun, I suppose, ahsab, I reckon, wa ara, I see, or I think, or I believe, or I reckon. All of them could be translated in the same way. Imam is saying refrain from these words, especially in an area where you do not possess the knowledge. Unfortunately, in our communities, mashwara is free, right? And everybody comes to your help when you need some sort of advice. So advices are free of charge. And unfortunately, advices are free of charge in two specific fields. One in medicine. All the doctors sitting over here, they must feel like pulling their hair when people are giving advice about medicine. Baba, you don't have knowledge of it. You haven't studied the science. You know, someone comes and complains about some sort of problem that they're facing, right away you will find hundreds of nuskha and prescriptions from grandparents from olden days. Oh, we used to do this. You go ahead and mix these things together, and inshallah you will find, some sort of cure. Maybe you may. But what if you don't? Have you tried it yourself? So easily we'll go out and give advice in an area which we have zero expertise. And next, unfortunately, is the area of deen, religion. That everybody is a religious expert. That the moment you ask a question, it takes a person to say, I don't know. A lot of time, people think that because I'm sitting on this mimbar, I would have all the knowledge of deen. I don't know if the story is correct or not. Mullah Nasruddin's character was once asked a question. He responded by saying, I don't know. The guy turned around and said, you have a huge amama on your head and you're saying, I don't know? He took off his amama and he gave it to the guy. He said, you wear it and see if you can answer the question. If it's true, by the way. But nonetheless, you'll find people to go ahead and make comments about deen. ما يلفظ من قول إلا لديه رقيب عتيد. Surah Qaf. Not a word comes out of your mouth that you will be held responsible for it. Therefore, refrain from venturing out in the area where you do not possess knowledge. That's the best way to do. And say, I don't know. Instead of guessing that I guess. Da anka. I guess, I suppose, I reckon. Da anka adhunnu wa ara wa ahsab. That's number one. Easy to remember, inshallah. Number two, Imam said in this book, Dastur Ma'alim al-Hikam, and Qadi al-Qudai narrates that Imam said, Takhayyar liwardika, which literally means choose. When you're making a choice, be very careful in making that choice. Don't rush to the choice that is available to you. Think about it, ponder when you have ikhtiyar, when you're making a choice. And the example is inspired by stating the fact that don't feed your camel from everywhere. Be very careful where you provide water for your camel. In that age in Arabia, obviously camels were your livelihood. They were means of travel. They provided for you. If you lost one, then it would be, financial crisis for you. And therefore, Imam is saying in that scarce desert where water is not easily available, it wasn't the case that you have, rest areas all throughout the highway. No, water is very scarce. You may not find it for another few hundred miles, but Imam is still saying, be very careful where you choose to feed your camel. Even in the scarce environment of desert where water is not easily available. Why? Because this is where your livelihood lies. You don't want to make a wrong choice by feeding this camel and hence suffering from the loss of it. So how is that relevant to us? We don't have camels. You don't have camels. But Imam may be referring to all ages by saying that very careful when you choose what you feed your children and yourself, especially in the time, in the place that we live in. That be very careful when it comes to choosing haram morsel. It says, يُبِينُ فِي الضُّرِّيَّةِ لُقْمَةُ الْحَرَامِ يُبِينُ فِي الضُّرِّيَّةِ. One haram morsel will have effect not only on you, but on your progeny as well. I may have narrated this hadith another day. So therefore, be very careful what you provide for your children and for yourself. Because this is one of the reasons why insan loses his sharafat, his honor, integrity. One of the reasons why you don't find that same, enthusiasm in your ibadat, the same reason that you don't find your du'as to be accepted, and so on and so forth. All of those reasons fall under this category. A lot of time people say, when we make dua, the dua is not accepted. One of the reasons is because you're making it from the tongue which has tasted haram. And that was the kalam of Imam Hussein on the day of Ashur, when he was speaking to the army of Umar Asad, right? Imagine you and I hear a word of Imam 14 centuries after their demise. It has effect on us. It affects us. And we say, wow, subhanallah, and we try to implement that pearl of wisdom. But imagine if Imam himself was speaking to you. What kind of impact would that have? If Imam narrated a word himself to you directly, wouldn't that be different than just anyone else narrating it? Absolutely. But Imam is standing in front of the army of Umar Asad. He's speaking. Yet they won't have any effect on them. You know what Imam ultimately concluded? He said, لَقَدْ مُلِعَتْ بُطُونُكُمْ مِنَ الْحَرَامِ. The reason you do not have any effect of my words is because your bellies are filled with haram. The fact your bellies are filled with haram, they have impaired your thinking and you're unable to think properly. And you're not even having any effect on you, even though Imam Masoom is speaking directly to you. So, تَخَيَّرْ لِوَرْدِكَ. Number 3, Imam said, لَا تَقْضِي وَأَنْتَ غَضْبَانٌ وَلَا مِنَ النَّوْمِ السَّكْرَانِ. That do not judge anyone while you are in the state of anger. When you have been intoxicated or in the state of anger, look how Imam is comparing the state of anger with intoxication. Inshallah, we don't have that issue of intoxication over here, but all of us do get angry, often. Imam is comparing the two as same. وَلَا مِنَ النَّوْمِ السَّكْرَانِ. Or when a person is sleeping, or when the person is what? Is intoxicated. That state is similar to getting angry. That when you get angry, the decisions that you make at that time, the judgment that you pass at that time. He said, لَا تَقْضِي. Don't judge people. Don't make hasty decisions when you are what? When you're angry. And that is the reason when a person gets angry, there's remedy that is mentioned. If you're sitting down, stand up. If you're standing up, start walking. And anger is compared to with fire. How do you extinguish the fire? With water. It says go ahead and perform wudu when you get angry. And that will diminish the effects of this anger. But if you continue to speak in the state of anger, every word that comes out of your mouth is a flame that is going to land somewhere and it'll burn that place. So be very, very careful, especially when it comes to relationships. When it comes to, a spousal relationship. When it comes to the relationship of a father and a son. When it comes to the relationship of, sisters and brothers and so on and so forth. Especially spouses. That how do you treat one another, how you speak to one another. And whenever there's anger involved, how do you avoid that situation? I heard from one of the scholars that one day, the daughter of Imam Khomeini, she said that my father, when I was getting married, gave me an advice. He said to me that, oh my daughter, when your husband, for example, is shouting at you yelling at you, he's distraught and he's angry at you, don't respond right away. It's easy to say that than to do it. So don't respond right away. Delay your response by 5 minutes, by 10 minutes. What will that do? He said even if he was wrong, what it will do is that it will give him time to settle his anger down. And if he was wrong, if you speak after 5 minutes, it will have effect on him. But if you spoke right at the moment when he's angrily yelling at you, it will only fuel the conversation and make matters worse and escalate the argument. I think there's some echo in it. If you can kill the echo. I don't think I need it right now. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So she said he gave me that advice. And then she said the irony was, my father went to my husband and said the same exact thing to him as well. Now when your wife is shouting at you, or yelling at you, or angry at you, don't respond right away. Delay your response by a few minutes, and you will find that to be worthwhile. So I'll conclude these 3 hadiths that I narrated, easy to remember. First, Imam said, دَعَ عَنْكَ أَظُنُّ وَأَحْسَبُ وَأَرَى. Number 2, Imam said, تَخَيَّرْ لِوَرْدِكَ. Number 3, Imam said, لَا تَقْضِي وَأَنْتَ غَضْبَانٍ. And if you can remember these 3 pearls of wisdom from the book of Qadi al-Qudai, narrated the traditions of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and has been translated into English by Tahira Qutbuddin. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We underestimate sometimes the opportunities that have been given to us, the favors that Allah has bestowed upon us. A lot of time we look at the situation and we start complaining. And that was the reason that one of the students in the seminary of Najaf, by the name of Yusuf, a scholar by the name Jafar Mazari, he narrates this waqia in his book. He said there was a student in Najaf, his name was Yusuf, and he complained to Amir al-Mu'mineen. He visited Imam, and he looked at the chandelier, and he looked at the dari, the beautiful golden dome, and he said, "Oh Imam, what do you need all of these, adornments and these ornaments and this decoration for? The golden dome, the beautiful dari, the chandeliers, all of that. What do you need it for? While I am, struggling as a student over here. I am willing to, prolong or to continue or to give wus'at to my life, but I don't have means to do so." Well, you have all of these resources in your possession. He said he goes home, and Jafar Mazari narrates this. He said that person sees Amir al-Mu'mineen in his dream. Imam comes to his dream and he says that, "Oh Yusuf, if you want to be musahib of Ali, if you want the jiwar of Ali, that means if you want to spend your life in Najaf being our neighbor, then this is the life that you have to struggle. This is the life that you have to go by. Not having enough to eat, struggling, and so on and so forth. Because being a follower of Ali, and Nahjul Balagha Imam also mentions, that once you embrace our love, then get ready for the masa'ib to come your way." But then Imam gave him another option. But if you think, or if you want all of the worldly luxuries, then travel to India, go to this city, Hyderabad, go to so-and-so's house, and tell them, "Bi-asman ravad wa kare aftab kunat." He wakes up from his dream. He comes back to the shrine of Imam. He said, "Imam, I'm asking you to make my life easier, happier over here. And you're telling me to go to India?" He goes back and he sees the same exact thing. Imam tells him, "If you want our jivar, You want to stay here, then you have to live this life. But if you want the worldly asayish and luxuries, then the same thing. Go to so-and-so's house, knock on the door and say, Be asman ravad wa kare aftab kunad. Once again, he wakes up. He follows his dream. He sells all his possessions. He borrows money from people. Eventually makes his way to India, gets Hyderabad, knocks on that person's door, finds out who that was. People would not even let him in, looking at his outfit and all that. But as soon as he sees this man coming down, he says, Be asman ravad wa kare aftab kunad. The man says, let him in. They let him in. That man was a very influential person in Hyderabad at that time. He said, provide everything to this guy. Clean him up, give him a shower, give him clothes, give him all what he needs, and get him ready for tomorrow. The next day, mahfil was ready. They were all brought in. There were dignitaries in that mahfil. This man, who was probably one of the rulers of that time, he said, today I announce that I give half of my possessions to this young man, and I marry one of my 2 daughters to this man. Right away, people were puzzled. He said, what happened? You don't even know this person. This man, Yusuf himself, was puzzled. What is going on? Why all of this altaf? Why all of this lutf to me? And then that man said, I'll tell you why. Because a couple of years ago, I had tried to, say a few words in the praise of Amirul Mu'mineen. And I said the first sentence, but I could not get the second sentence, second word. Shairi mein, the couplet, you have the 2 lines. I was able to say the first line, but I could not think of an appropriate second line for it. I asked, because the poetry was in Farsi, many of the Farsi poets to complete it, but sometimes they were able to do so, but the message was not good enough. Then I gave up. I said, maybe this sha'r of mine is not accepted, by Amirul Mu'mineen. So why bother? But I said, the moment a person comes and finishes this, I will go ahead and give half of my possessions and marry one of my daughters to him. Until yesterday, this man knocked on the door and he completed this couplet. People said, what was the couplet? He said, I had said a few years ago, بِذَرِّ gar nadar lutf buturab kunad. If Ali looks at a dharra, an atom, a worthless thing, بِذَرِّ gar nadar lutf buturab kunad, Be asman ravad wa kare aftab kunad. This zarra would be given so much ability that it will rise to the skies and it will do the job of a sun. Asman ravad wa kare aftab kunad. That is the ability of Ali looking at a dharra and giving it elevation that it will rise to the skies and it will do similar to what sun does to all of us. He said, the moment this guy completed it, now understand. The man turned around and he said, this is not from me, brother. This is the ata of my Mawla Amirul Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. He said, if Ishq Ali can give you all my possessions or half my possessions, which is enormous, just imagine if you were able to build this Ishq with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What will reach you? What you can attain by having this relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, we understand the kalam of Ma'asumeen. We look at the kalam of Ma'asumeen. Similar, and if not better, it holds out for the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now I'll bring you back to the kalam of Allah. That when we narrated this ayah, or we recited this ayah the other day, that Allah says in Quran that Prophet will be making a complaint, Ya Rabbi inna qawmi ittakhadhu hadha al-Qur'ana mahjura, that, oh Allah, my people abandoned this book. And this is a fair claim and complaint by Amirul Mu'mineen, by Rasulullah. That on the day of judgment, Rasulullah will make this complaint. So we want to make sure that we are not part of that group, which is the one who has abandoned this book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, we talked about Quran, how we have abandoned this book, how we have neglected this book, how underutilized this book is in our lives. It is used when someone dies. While it's not kitab-e mamat, it's kitab-e hayat. It's not just dedicated for those who have left this world. It is for those who are alive more than it is for those who have left this world. So the underutilization of this book will put us there where Prophet will be making this claim that we have abandoned this book. And Muslims are to blame more so for the abandonment. Sometimes we abandon this book by focusing only on the ayat which are mutashabih. Then some of us abandon this book by looking at the ayat which are talking about qital and killing. And sometimes we focus our attention towards those ayat which are contradictory. None of these are going to go ahead and excel us in understanding this book. Because mutashabih is there. The verses which are about qital and killing are there. And verses which may seem like contradictory, they're also there. But this is only when we take kitab and neglect Ahlul Bayt. Prophet said, I'm leaving behind 2 weighty things, not 1 weighty thing. So make sure that you have the complete formula. So I'll give you a few examples. There was a man by the name Ishaq Kindi, one of the philosophers of Islam. He started writing a book where he was compiling contradictions in Quran. One contradiction after another. It was the time of our 11th Imam. One of the students of 11th Imam was also a student of Ishaq. Imam said to Ishaq, the student of Ishaq, why don't you tell your teacher to stop writing this book? He said, how can I say that? He's my ustad, he's my teacher. There's some respect. Imam said, okay, get close to him when you're able to freely speak to him. He said, I'll do that. And when the day comes, tell him, is this what you think of the kalam-e-ilahi, or this is how Allah meant it? That man, Ishaq, turned around and said to this guy, I've never thought that way. That I'm contradicting these ayat based on my understanding. But is it what Allah has meant with this ayah? He said, where did you get this from? He said, Ustad, I came up with it. He said, being my student, you cannot come up with it. There must be another source. So he pointed toward Imam that yes, Imam told me this way. Ishaq destroyed all of his work. But there are still remnants of that where people have done a great deal to go out and find contradiction. What does this contradiction do? What it does is that it keeps us away from moving forward and utilizing this book properly to our benefit. For example, the ayat of Quran which says, Ala bidhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. I recited this yesterday, so I'm linking it back again. That with the dhikr of Allah, your hearts are what? At peace, are tranquil. But another place in Quran you find, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ وَجَلَتْ قُلُوبُهُم. Mu'min are those, when Allah's dhikr is done, their hearts start to tremble. Now you tell me, in one place with the dhikr, your hearts are mutma'in. At another place with the dhikr of Allah, your hearts are muztarib. At one place, your hearts are at peace and tranquil. At another place, the ayah says your hearts are what? Trembling. Is tranquility and trembling not opposite of one another? Therefore, there is contradiction in Quran. Right away, this ayat is there. And there are many such. For example, Allah says in Ali Imran 102, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ittaqullaha haqqa tuqatih. O those who believe, fear Allah the way He deserves to be feared. Haqqa tuqatih. Whatever is the haqq of the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then we find another place in Quran, Allah says, ittaqullaha mastata'tum. Fear Allah according to your abilities. You tell me, according to your abilities and the way He deserves, are they not opposite of one another? Are they not contradictory to one another? So yes, indeed. Or for example, when in Surah Qaf, Allah says to Jahannam, Halim tala'ati, are you full? The Jahannam will respond by saying, Hal min mazid? Is there more? No, there's plenty of room. Send them over. I got more room. But at another place, one of the sifat of Jahannam is makanan dayyaqa. Jahannam is a very tight place. There's not much room in it. So there you go. There's contradiction in Quran. And there are many such verses that exist. Again, if we think it through our own minds, we will find contradictions. But we do tamassuk to Ahlul Bayt, we'll see, no, there isn't really any contradiction that exists in these ayat. I'll try and slowly explain all three of them towards the conclusion. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Where it says that with the remembrance of Allah, hearts are at peace. And with the remembrance of Allah, hearts tremble. An example for the younger crowd over here. Imagine when you've come to Majlis over here, a father and a son. Some of you, most of you have driven from your houses. Some of you may have to walk back because you live close by. You will remain here after the English Majlis, the Urdu one will start, the Urdu one will finish. By let's say 9:30, 10 o'clock, the Matam will end. You stay here a little bit longer. By the time you're heading back home, it's already dark. And you have to walk by this alley, this street, where there's no light, and it's dark, and the area is not very good either. There's a possibility of thieves or someone who may, try to steal something from you, or whatever the case may be. When this 5-year-old is holding on to the hand of his father, and they're walking back home through that street, if anyone has fear, it's not that 5-year-old. It's the father. Father has the fear that they might get looted. Someone may attack them. There might be animals. There might be dangerous animals on the way. There might be potholes, whatnot. But the 5-year-old has no fear because he has complete trust in his father. He's holding on to his hand and has complete trust that whatever happens, my father's there. I have no fear, none whatsoever. Same situation, two different scenarios. Son has zero fear, or the daughter has zero fear, but the father may be fearful for his well-being as well as his child's well-being. Same scenario, the child was caught doing something mischievous, and father saw it. Now they're walking back home. Now both, the father's heart may be trembling because of the situation. The son's heart is also trembling because he was caught doing something wrong, and he knows that he will be punished once they arrive home. Both of their hearts are trembling. Example for our adults sitting over here. Imagine a cardiologist who's done hundreds of successful heart surgeries. It's a walk in the park for him. He goes regular day at work. He goes, open heart, no problem. He does it. For us, the family members who are going through this, it's a very difficult day, but for him it's not, because it's his regular routine. But imagine today he has to perform the same surgery on someone very influential and important, marja taqleed, or the president, or a king, or imam of the time. It's not an ordinary situation anymore. Hearts and the hands will be trembling because of this surgery, although hundreds of successful surgeries have done before. So you see the difference, that sometimes what happens is that when you are obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your hearts are at peace. And sometimes when you're disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your hearts may tremble. But even a person who's obedient may have both situations with him, that his hearts are at peace with the dhikr of Allah, but his heart also trembles with the dhikr of Allah because of the awe and the fear and the magnitude and the exalted nature of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salawat bhi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Second example was ittaqullah haqqa tuqatih, fear Allah the way He deserves. Or fear Allah according to your best ability. And do your best. Is doing your best equal to the way it should be done? No. You're asking someone to install, some plumbing, do some plumbing, install some pipes. I said, do your best. Or at one point, I said, no, do the way it should be done. There's a difference between the two. You hired a professional, you want a job done which is the way it should be so it doesn't leak. I don't have to call you back again. Or you just tell your neighbor, just do your best, whatever you know how to do it. There's a difference between the two. When Imam was posed with this question, Imam said, when Allah says, fear Allah the way He deserves is your destination. But fear Allah according to your best ability, that is the path upon which you must get on. And there's no contradiction between the two, because you must do your best to remain on this path, and eventually you will arrive at that destination. So hence, there isn't any contradiction. Once again, if you do tamassuk to Ahlul Bayt, you find that this Quran is intact and there isn't any contradiction in it. And lastly, but not least, the example of Jahannam. The Quran says, Hal min mazid? It says, keep it on coming. I got more room. I can adjust. I got more room. Keep sending more Jahannamis over here. But then it says, it's makanan zayyaqa. It's a very tight place. And usually the scholars have given the example, and I'll narrate Atullah Mohsin Qarati. He exemplifies this by saying that imagine, I'm looking for an empty wall. A wall like this, or a wall in the back. If someone was to ask you, how many nails can you hammer into that wall? By the way, don't do it. How many nails can you hammer into that wall back there? Well, you look at the wall, it's 10 feet by 8 feet long. You say nails are very small, maybe 1,000, maybe 2,000, I don't know, probably more. We can't really put a number. So that means a lot of nails can be hammered into that wall. You say, yes, it's got a lot of room for a lot of small nails. But each nail that goes inside that wall is of a very tight place in its own. So while the Jahannam is a huge, humongous place, but every person that is entered into this Jahannam will be struggling for place because it will be so tight and difficult for them to breathe in. So there isn't any contradiction. And there are many such examples that could be found in Quran. So we want to be amongst those who are not the ones who have abandoned this book. Imam asked for muhlat on the night of Ashur. He said to Hazrat Abbas, tell them that give us one more night because we want to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam wasn't asking for permission. Imam was probably giving them one more night to think about and ponder over. And that resulted fruitfully that many people walked from the camps of Umar Asad and joined Imam Hussein. We only mentioned Bukair and his father Hurr, but there were many others who came and joined Imam Hussein as well. But this was the opportunity that was given to him. But Imam gave a reason, why do I need this one night? He said, Inni uhibbu salat wa tilawatul Quran. Because I love salat and the recitation of Quran. The recitation of Quran. There are benefits that are associated with it. Just make a habit of reading 5 to 10 ayat on a daily basis. And you will find the fruits of it as the time comes about. This last hadith from Amirul Mu'mineen, and I'll bring you towards the Masahib very quickly. Now, what are the benefits of recitation of Quran? Imam said, إِنَّ الْبَيْتَ الَّذِي يُقْرَأُ فِيهِ الْقُرْآنِ وَيُذْكَرُ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ فِيهِ. House in which Quran is recited. You don't need to pick up the book of Quran, making the excuses that I don't have wudu, I don't want to go get wudu, and la yamassuhu illa al-mutahharun, and so all that stuff. No, you have your gadgets. When you spend, on daily basis, now there's an application which tells you how much time you spent, the screen time of yours. Out of those 4 hours, 3 hours of your screen time, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, reading Quran. Download this Quran app, read Quran. And then if you have the opportunity, read the translation. Imam said, house in which Quran takthuru barakatuhu. Blessings increase. Tahduruhul malaika. Malaika, the angels gain access to this house. Wa tahjuru shayateen. And the Satans stay away from this house. Tudi'u li ahli as-sama'i kama tudi'u al-kawakib li ahli al-ard. This house shines for the inhabitants of heavens the same way the stars shine for the inhabitants of earth. When you look up on the sky, you see these stars shining. When the inhabitants of heaven look down, they see these houses shining like stars. Because Quran is recited, because Allah is remembered, the barakat increase. The malaika come to this house, and shayateen stay away from these houses. Imam said, on the contrary, إِنَّ الْبَيْتَ الَّذِي لَا يُقْرَأُ فِيهِ الْقُرْآنِ وَلَا يُذْكَرُ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ فِيهِ تَقِلُّ بَرَكَتُهُ. House in which Quran is not recited, or Allah is not remembered. Rather, instead of Quran, music is played in that house, let's just say. تَقِلُّ بَرَكَتُهُ. Barakat and the blessings in this house decrease. تَحْضُرُهُ الشَّيَاطِينَ. Shayateen gain access to this house. Malaika stay far, far away from such houses. It's a very simple formula. Imam on the night of Ashur is saying, I want some time to recite the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's the reason he's giving one more time, one more night, an opportunity for these people to realize the mistake that they have made. And when this caravan had moved from Karbala, remember the wasiyah of Imam to Janab Zainab was also that do not forget me in your Salat al-Layl. And she did not. I mentioned this Masayib yesterday, that in the Zindan, in the prison, Janab Zainab was performing even Salat al-Layl. Forget about the wajib Salat. Even Salat al-Layl was being performed in that Zindan. But how she was performing? Sitting down because there wasn't enough food for her to eat and consume. Ajrukum Allah. These are the nights and the days in which the caravan was given the permission to move from Sham. This is where, when Yazid was thinking that he has accomplished something, he was brought to his knees and he admitted the fact that he's made a mistake. And how when they had brought Ahlul Bayt in humiliation by decorating the city with all the respect and honor, they're sending them back. In fact, Yazid comes to our Imam, fourth Imam, and he asks him that, do you want to stay here or do you want to go back to Medina? Whatever is your choice. Imam says, we definitely want to go back to Medina. But it was asked, how do you want to go back? He said, we want to go back through Karbala. He comes to Bibi Zainab, he says, we have to leave, we've been given the permission. And Janab Zainab said that I want to hold one majlis over here. A majlis was situated, it was established. All the Shami women came to this majlis. The heads of the shuhada were placed in that majlis. And this majlis began. As soon as the head of Imam Hussein was brought in, Zainab leapt onto that head of Imam Hussein and she started crying. As soon as the head of Ali Akbar was brought in, his mother would leap on the head and she would start crying. As soon as the head of Qasim was brought in, his mother would do the same thing. As soon as the heads of other shuhada were brought in, their warasa would go ahead and get a hold of these heads and they would start crying. Until that there were two heads that were laying there. The heads of Aun and Muhammad, and no lady picked up those heads. Even the Shami women noticed that when the head of Hussein came, when the head of Abbas, when the head of Ali Akbar, when the head of Qasim, when the head of other kids came, there was someone who would go ahead and embrace these heads. But as soon as these two young heads came, of Aun and Muhammad, nobody moved forward to go ahead and embrace them and to go ahead and weep over them. الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. Oh Allah, please accept our ibadah tonight. We have committed a lot of sins. Please forgive our sins. Oh Allah, give us the tawfiq and ability to follow the teachings and the commands of Masumeen alayhim salatu wassalam. Oh Allah, hasten the reappearance of our way to the Imam. Make us amongst the helpers and the soldiers from our akhir dawana. Alhamdulillah.